Letters from a Slave Girl, pages 108 to 125. October, 1838. Dear John, not a word from you. Have you run away then? If you're not a slave any more, John, don't forget the slaves you left behind. The past month we've been lashed by 3 hard storms in a row. Each time the clouds hang heavy and dark, and like a monster the hurricane springs right at us from the sea. I wait out the night rains in the storeroom, but have to stay in my hole for the day gales. For hours, wild winds drove rain in through the chinks, leaving me cold and drenched and feeling punished for something I didn't do. The water from the rivers is still high in the swamps, and Gran's patch a mess. All the corn blew over or broke off. We hear that Samuel and his bride is stopping in New York and then coming on home. John, please be with them. So many folks has gone and left me. Will I be talking to you in my letter book too? Your Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 1. November 1838. Dear John, Gran is weak with sorrow. The day you all do in Edenton, she makes a big meal and asks some of your friends over. I hear her snap out a clean white apron, tie it on, and announce my favorite boy going to have his favorite food. She fixed black-eyed peas, green beans with fat back, and sweet potato pie. She even laid your plate in its old spot on the table. Up in my hole I listen for your step and your voice. When the stagecoach come by, Mark run to the tavern to meet you. But he come home alone, and I hear Gran cry, "Where is my grandchild?" Then Samuel sends a boy with a note. "John did not return with me and Mrs. Sawyer," it read. "The abolitionists in New York tricked him into running away." Poor Samuel. Sometimes I feel sorry for him. He truly believes, brother, that you too loyal to leave your master unless you've been duped. Must be some kind of white folks conjure. When it comes to slavery, they make themselves be blind. And he just can't see. You would be his friend, but you won't be his slave. Gran been weeping for hours, though I only hear sniffling now. And a new worry has needled its way into my thoughts. What if Samuel, so vexed with you that he sells my children to make up the loss? I know we wished for freedom when we were young, but now that you grab your chance, feels like you left us swinging in the wind. Aunt Betty says there is sorrow in the Norcom house, too. Young Benjamin Rush Norcom is wasting away for months and finally has died. Betty says she feels more alone than ever. She raised those Norcom children like they her own. I guess because they all she got. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 2. November 1838. Dear John, last Sunday we've been set straight about what you done. Gran sitting on the piazza with her children. Sometimes on a Sabbath she brings them out to play when I can hear them. And I am so proud of them. Louisa turned 5 last month and Joseph getting tall as sage-grass. Grandma, he says, is Uncle John gone for good? Well, Gran just finished up a crying fit over you, John. I hear her chair scrape and all she says is, "Hm." Grandma, Joseph asks, can Uncle John find our mamma? And Gran answers, "Humph," like she is disgusted with you for running away and me for giving her white hair and Joseph for asking so many questions. Then he says, why don't you and Uncle Mark and all of us go live with Uncle John and Mama? Boy, Gran says with a big sigh, you got more questions than a bullfrog got crooks. My heart aches when I hear Louisa ask, but how do we find Mama? I don't remember what she looks like. Then Aunt Sue walks through the gate with one more question to torment Gran. She looks hard at her friend's red eyes and says, what's wrong, Molly? And Gran tells her, won't be nobody left to hand me a drink when I'm dying, nobody to lay my old body in the ground. She starts to cry again and says, my grandboy didn't come back with Mr. Sawyer. He stayed in the north. I hear old Aunt Sue clap her hands for joy. Is that all you crying for? She says, and then laughs. Get down on your knees and bless the Lord. Except for Sarah, my poor children been sold away. She reminds Gran, and I never expect to know where they are. But you know where John is, she says. He's in the freedom parts, and that's the right place. She shamed me and Gran both. Wherever you are, little brother, I hope freedom is shining its big eyes on you. Your loving sister, Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 3. August 29th, 1839. Dear John, Gran almost settled down about you running away, but since we got your letter from New Bedford, Massachusetts, she'll churn up again. I read it to her through the hole in Uncle Mark's wall. John, we all proud that you've been working during the day and going to school at night. That makes you the only one of us had any schooling. But when I get to the part about you shipping out to sea, Gran bows her head like she in church. She remembers Uncle Stephen's stories about whaling ships. Scary talk about harpoonists getting dragged down by the whale and ships breaking up on the rocks. Did you have to tell her you'd be gone for 3 years? Well, I can hear you sassing me back. Yes, so you say, there's lots of escaped colored men go out to sea. Yes, the color don't matter so much if a man can pull an oar and furl a sail. And yes, John, I know you're going to have time to practice your reading and writing. But it seems like after 3 years and all that danger, your share of whale oil ought to come out to more than $300. Sounds like another kind of slavery to me. Well, anyway, you gone, along with another year of my life. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 4. January 5th, 1840. Dear John, a new baby in the Sawyer family. Samuel's little girl Laura was baptized at St. Paul's today. Lavinia Sawyer still don't know Samuel already got 2 children. Mixed up children, some folks call colored babies with a white daddy, but they all his, still the same. Aunt Betty hears Maria Norcom talking to the doctor in the parlor. I have every intention of informing Mrs. Sawyer who is the father of Harriet's children, she tells him. Harriet is an artful devil, she says, and has made a great deal of trouble in our family. Then Norcom walks out, stiff as a rod, and without a word to his wife. Aunt Betty says he never mentions my name. Mrs. blames me that you run away. She is sure I've been in the North because of the letters I sent, so she thinks I saw you in New York and talked you into escape. Well, I don't give 2 shucks what Maria Norcom thinks, but if Lavinia Sawyer hears about Joseph and Louisa, she might get rid of them. John, why can't you be here to help us? All these years of hiding only to see my girl and boy taken away. Harriet. January 25th, 1840. Dear John, Gran up most of the night making cakes and dozens of snowballs for Norcom's daughter-in-law. You remember it is a tedious recipe that takes much time. When you were a boy, you hated paring and stuffing the apples with marmalade before Gran wrapped them in pastry. Always hide behind a shed when she called for help. Funny how you were always close by when they came out of the oven. Well, Gran needed her John last night. She says she could hardly keep her eyes open to make the crackers, but ever since Samuel got married, she's been nervous about the children. She's been cooking as much as she can to save for their freedom. Keeps every spare cent in a little bag. Joseph was sent to buy more cinnamon today and came home mad. He run in the kitchen door saying, Gran, I saw a stranger lady with Mr. Sawyer. She called me a name, says I'm a pretty little Negro, and she wants to know who I belong to. Well, we know who that stranger lady is. John, I am worn down with worrying about my babies. Do you remember the old tale Gran used to tell us about flying back to Africa? I want to get inside that story, lift a child under each arm, grab a magic hoe, and sail straight out over the sea. Harriet. January 26, 1840. Dear John, Lavinia. She knows about the children and got big plans for them. Her sister from Chicago is visiting. She is taking a liking to Louisa and wants to adopt her, and Lavinia plans to move Joseph to her own house. Poor Gran is all tired out, but she is going over to reason with Samuel tonight. Harriet. January 27, 1840. Dear John, Samuel thinks the children are not safe here. Says Norcom been bragging that he was tricked into selling them and that they still in his power. So my baby's trapped between 2 masters, like rabbits cornered by hound dogs. Gran has fixed it so that Samuel and Lavinia will first take Louisa with them to Washington City. I don't like it much. Lavinia might make my daughter maid to her freeborn little sister. I don't want her used that way even for a short while. Then they send her to live with his cousin in Brooklyn, New York. I can join her there if I ever get free. One good thing is she be going to school. How do they treat colored children in New York? I wish you were here to tell me. I will say it to you before anybody else, because Gran and Mark going to raise torment, but I don't care how dangerous it is, my girl going to see her mama before she leaves. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 5. January 31st, 1840. Dear John, words. They only poor silent beggars that can't tell how I feel. Only a slave mama could understand. Mark keep watch at the gate while I slip down to the piazza and up the steps to my old room. When he lead my girl in by hand, she don't know me till I say, "Louisa, I am your mamma." And in a moment we hold in each other close. Been 5 long years since I felt the softness of her cheek. "You really my mamma?" she says. "But why don't you come before?" There being no easy answer to that question, I answer it with another. "Do you like to go away?" I ask, and she starts to cry. "I don't know," she says. "Gran tells me I be going to a good place where I can learn to read and write, and by I can write her a letter. But I won't have Joseph," she says, "or Gran, or Uncle Mark, or nobody to love me." And then I make promises that might be false as spring snow. "I will come soon," I tell my Lulu, "and bring Joseph with me, and the 3 of us going to live together in our own home and have happy times." Uncle Mark tells her, "Louisa, this is the secret you promised your grandmother never to tell. If you speak of this night, you won't ever see your gran again, and your mamma can't come to Brooklyn." "I won't never tell," she promises. She is only 7, and Mark looks worried, but I know my daughter. She will not tell. Louisa fell asleep in my arms. I watched her face all through the moonshiny night. By dawn I was back in my den, and in 2 hours I hear her say goodbye to neighbors and friends. The gate slammed, the stagecoach blew its horn, and my child was gone from sight. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 6. March 1840. Dear John, I don't know if your niece is dead, dying, or sold and marched down to the Mississippi bottoms. 3 months gone by, and not a word from Samuel. I write in Gran's name to Brooklyn, but they say Louisa is not there. I write to Washington City, but they don't answer. John, you were smart to leave Samuel when you did. I've been trusting him since the first day I ever climbed into his bed. When he said to you, "John, I will free you in 5 years," I think he meant it. When he says to me, "Harriet, I will set your children free," he wants to do it. Samuel Sawyer is not a bad man on purpose, but even a gentleman don't think he has to keep his word to a slave. Harriet. June 1840. Dear John, Samuel's young cousin is written at last to Gran from Brooklyn. Louisa just got there, and she sends a hidden message in the letter for me. "I try to do what you told me," she says, "and I pray for you every night." But the cousin wrote something else that has set me shaking. "Mr. Sawyer," she writes, "has given Louisa to me to be my little waiting maid. I shall send her to school, and I hope some day she will write to you herself." I don't know what this means. Is Louisa staying there till I can come, or is Samuel giving his daughter away as property only to be sold again in the South? John, seems like all these years I've been a foolish puppy chasing myself in circles to save the children. I run and run, but I never do catch up. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 7. June 1841. Dear John, I worry some about Joseph. For months he don't seem easy in his mind. He does his chores without a word, sweeps the yard and totes water from the well for Gran, but the minute he sees a constable or patrol, he runs inside to tell her. And he misses his sister. Gran says he has been spending many hours fishing in the creek, or sometimes he goes down to the wharf like we used to and skip rocks out in the water, except he goes alone. His loneliness hurts me, but I use the time when he is gone to stretch my legs in the storeroom. Mary Matilda Norcombe been getting schooling in Philadelphia, and Norcombe last left week to visit her. I still send letters to him. Had the last one mailed from Canada. Because of the letters, I believe he has given up on me, but I still rests easier when he is out of town. Aunt Betty come to visit last night. We talked through the hole in the wall, and she says the doctor sent a box of presents to his children from Norfolk. Red striped gingham dress cloth for little Elizabeth, a farmer's almanac for James, and a book of letters and pictures for baby William. Aunt Betty and I whisper laugh. James got to pay his father for the almanac, she says, and poor William got to learn how to spell in exchange for the book. And no present at all for Maria, his own wife. He's too mean to die, I tell Betty, because the Lord don't want him and the devil won't let him in. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 8. January 2nd, 1842. Dear John, no morning visit to the storeroom. Got to stick close by my den. The slave catcher's been sniffing around all day looking for Aunt Sue Bent's daughter Sarah. Sarah, and her 4 little girls had been split up and sold at the hiring out. Sarah ran away. Patrols come by with big noise early this morning, a rarin' and a tearin' through Aunt Sue's little house right here on the back of Gran's lot. I lay still all the while, hardly moving or breathing, till I hear them leave. Then Joseph runs to Gran to say he got a glimpse of Sarah in her mama's hut. Gran told him it was a deep secret, and to make him swear on the Bible never to tell. Sarah, she got lots of spunk, but I know she is terrified out in that hut. I wish she could share my nook, but it would only put more worry on Gran's back. Ever since Louisa left, I've been thinking my time is about spent here. And now Samuel says he's going to send Joseph north as soon as Uncle Mark can take him. Besides, the shingles are wearing out, and I get soaked with every rain. Mark can't fix the roof without people seeing me. Mark and Gran have been telling our trusty friends to look for me and escape. Be patient, Mark says, but some days I think I won't last another minute. Harriet. February 8th, 1842. Dear John, I read through my letter book and remember all who has left me behind. Parents, uncles, sweetheart. They only shadows to me now, like when nighttime crowds the trees and pushes them out of sight. But to lose Aunt Betty, this is the hardest of all. Our dear aunt is struck by paralysis and may be in her death sickness. Gran with her at the doctor's house now. Norcom is treating Betty, but he tells Gran where recovery does not follow the attack in a short time, it very seldom takes place at all. Mark just come back to say that Betty, she is having trouble talking, but Gran kneels by the bed and holds her daughter's hand. They smilin' and talkin' with their eyes. Harriet. February 10th, 1842. Dear John, some sorrow too heavy to hold. Mark come from Norcom's, and I hear Aunt Sue downstairs ask, how is she? She is dead, Mark says, and up in my cell I faint away. When I opened my eyes, the roof was whirling over my head and Mark was there. Harriet, he whispers, she died happy. Toward the end, Aunt Betty held up her hand to let Gran know all was well. Mark says even the doctor cried some. She has always been a faithful servant, he tells Gran, and we shall never be able to replace her. Then they let 6-year-old William Norcom come in. Of all the Norcom children Aunt Betty raised, she favored him the most. I think she's been slowly murdered by hard work, John. All my troubles helped finish it up. She's been the comfort of my life. No one prized freedom more than our good aunt. She used to kneel by the hole and whisper to me, I am old and don't have long to live. I could die happy if only I could see you and the children free. Well, I hope she has found her own promised land. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 9. February 13th, 1842. Dear John, I know Aunt Betty is happy being laid away on a Sabbath. Maria Norcom wanted her buried in the white folks' burying grounds so that her slave would lie at her feet when the missus die. But Gran says a flat no. I want Betty to lie with all the rest of my family, she says, and where my own old body will be buried. So Maria had to comfort herself with the doctor's carriage leading off the procession and her own white preacher saying the service. After years of work and broken rest, it seems like the missus a little late in her affection to our aunt. But I guess it makes a good show for the slaveholder to miss her old, worn-out servant. Mark says there were lots of colored folks, both slave and free, and a few white people that had always been friendly to our family. He says Mrs. Norcom did drop a tear or two at the grave. I wonder what Maria Norcom do if she turned and see me standing next to her. Her tears would dry faster than spit on an iron. I hear poor Gran downstairs now. She has lost her last daughter. God help me, says she. I only got one child left. Harriet. Please stop here and answer question 10.